Thank you very much. Thank you very much for accepting me here in the conference, even I don't speak Portuguese. Okay, are you sharing my PowerPoint presentation, Elsa? No?
No.
Okay, sorry. Thank you, Professor Doutora, for inviting me, and Elsa for translating my presentation. It was in a short time, and thank you very much. So, as you said, we will have about 30 minutes, 40 minutes maximum. I will mainly talk, but I would like to interact with you, and if possible, that you write on the chat, as Elsa said. I'm going to talk to you about resilience. The invitation was to talk about resilience during changing time. I know Elsa introduced me as the president of IFSW and professor in the university, but today in my presentation, I will talk to you about practice. I'm also a practitioner. I work now for 25 years in the area of trauma, traumatized children, domestic violence, and for the last 10 years, I was working in disasters, training social workers for disaster interventions. So I'm leading now a very big team of social workers that are working in the emergency hospitals in Romania, and also I'm working international with NATO for helping dislocated people as well as refugees when it's come to intervention, humanitarian intervention. So today I will talk to you about resilience as I and social workers experienced over the last year. I think in the last 10 years, I heard less about resilience than in the last year. Everybody's talking about resilience. In fact, we're talking about resilience today. Our colleagues in Ireland, they were talking about resilience today. I was informing Elsa and Professor Doutora that Ireland is celebrating 50 years of social work. So they were discussing a lot about resilience. For me, it's really a pleasure to share with you these experiences that I had. A few words about how I collected this experience that I'm going to talk to you today. Since March last year, when we start to have pandemic in Romania, I immediately opened at the European level, but mainly in my country, a help desk, and I start to help social workers in Europe. The first group I start to work with were social workers in Italy, because they were the first hit by pandemic, and then I cooperate with social workers all over Europe, sharing experiences with them or connecting social workers all over Europe. It was very intense. In Romania, I was working on one hand in providing counseling to social workers in social services and in the hospitals. I think I provide about almost 1,000 hours altogether. And I'm also offering counseling for people going to multiple trauma. And I work with doctors in hospitals in specific situation. Like, for example, we had in my country, we had terrible situation on the oxygen exploded in hospitals and the hospital were in fire. And along with the pandemic, we had also terrible situation in hospitals with people being burned in hospitals and doctors being totally traumatized. So I'm providing this kind of counseling for people in such terrible situation. In my work with social workers, I identify mainly 3 words they were using, and 3 words that they all the time, you know, I could find it in their sentences. And this was change. All the time they start discussing with me, they were saying, everything is changing in the job. We don't know what to do. We can't do the work the same. Everything is changing. And, you know, I was thinking about from last year, from March, that I heard so much this word as much as I heard it from the soldiers when they are talking about war and that they have to work in this camp for dislocated people and everything is changing every day. And I talk now about the military soldier, the military doctors. And another word that I heard, it was burnout. So people were saying all the time that they, you know, they have no time for themselves. They don't have time to reflect in what they are doing. They have to change immediately. They don't know if what they are doing is all right or not. And they become a kind of sponge for traumatized events of their clients, really. All the time, a social worker said, we are emotionally down, we have no energy. And the third word, of course, was resilience. Yeah, everybody said, we are resilient or we are not resilient. And I asked them, what do you mean you are not resilient? And they said, well, we are not managing well this pandemic. I asked them, what do they understand through this word? And, you know, for me, it was really strange to find out that social workers in Europe are misusing this word and create a pressure on social workers. You know, I have head of social services calling me and said, you have to help my social workers because they are not resilient. You have to make them resilient. And I was like, yes, how? What do you mean? And, you know, a number of social workers start to blame themselves that they are not resilient enough and that they have to do something to be resilient. And this word, you know, for me, start to be clear that everybody is using it and misusing this word, putting a lot of pressure on social workers. So then the question came, what does it mean to be resilient? Is it positive thinking? Is this enough? And if it's not enough, then what do we have to do in order that we are building resilience? And there are, of course, a number of information we find about resilience, but if you look to the information, there is no resilience really clear in research connected to social work. So we are just bring this from somewhere else. We don't have good research on resilience. We are in the beginning because we were just using this word. So in many situations, I heard that we social workers are becoming resilient if we are more and more exposed to traumatic situation. So we are getting used, which means we are strong enough. But this is not happening. And if you are looking in this way, then it's really dangerous for your mental and emotional health. And of course, in my presentation, I will talk more about social workers, because if we don't know how to build resilience for ourselves, definitely we cannot help people in front of us. So I think we were forced, most of us, as a professional, even were more and more dangerous, we were forced to become resilient in a way that you don't build resilience normally. You know, resilience, in order to build resilience, you have to have the ability to calculate risk and then to try and then to be flexible about the goal you are looking for and then to try again and to be in a safe environment. But we were not able to build resilience in the context of this pandemic, because it was about life and death, and you can't do that. So if we are not about coming out stronger from stressful situation, what do we include in this process of resilience, and how do we build it? So what I did since March last year, it was to take the factor of resilience which we are using when we are working with traumatized children. So I think if we social workers work with traumatized children and help them to stay resilient in the development, even they are facing terrible time, then why not get all this information we have and try to bring it in our life as a professional for the first time, I would say, because so far we were not in the situation to talk about this. So I took the factors that in general I use when I'm working with children or people going through trauma. Yeah. So being resilient means a lot of things. Here I just collect a few things for you. First of all, means that we are able to project ourselves in the future. Means that we are able to plan for the future. So we are resilient. Even when we are in terrible time, we are still able to build our future, to do some action for today, but to see the future. And what happened to us during this time, and what happened to social workers, you know, I think the most difficult was for social workers in residential centers, because they had to spend a lot of time isolated in these centers, and also for the social workers in hospitals. So what happened to us was that we were not able anymore, and we are still not able to plan. For example, we were using our practice to do this planning for the future with our clients, yeah, so to look where we want to go. And today we don't know where we want to go, because where we don't see the day in 1 month, nobody can see. If you look to our governments, definitely they don't know what to tell us. Yeah, they say, yeah, if the rate is going down, if the rate is going up, so what do we do then? And because of that, I think with this, we also lost our ability to make prediction for the future. We cannot predict, not anymore. Or we know that this is a need we have as professionals to be able to predict our intervention and our future. So I think what we really need during this time is that we use one of the skills that we have in our professional profile to work with, you know, flexibility, and to understand that and to learn. This is a result of learning how we can be flexible while going in this trip of solving problems. Yeah. So I think so far in our social work interventions, in our social work services, we were to look, where do we want to go? And this time, I think we have to learn to just look to the journey and to be in the journey. And if so far we were the one providing services to people, this time we have to work with people, because they are more than ever part of the decision and of the journey. So they are part of, they have to be part of. So it's very interesting the way we have to adapt not our skills or our values, but more our perception, our understanding of the fact that what we were doing is now a matter of changing our practice. So, so far, for example, social workers said, yeah, you know, we have to change procedure, we have to change techniques, we have to move to online. Yes, all of this, but more than anything, first, we have to be sure that we put ourselves in the right relationship to the context we have to do our intervention, because we are in the ocean, we are on the ocean. We don't know exactly how the waves are going to come. So that's really important for us to change this approach. So if you find any of this in your practice from these points, please let me know in the comment, in the chat. Another point that is part of building resilience, and is part of building our resilience and building other people's resilience, is that we have to learn to make a difference between a person and the problem. And I remember I learned this 15 years ago, that I, as social worker, I have to understand the difference between the person and the problem, and to use the resources the person has in order to solve the problem the person has. And I remember that many years I work with social workers, advising them to make the difference between a child and the problem the child is having, because the moment the parents are saying we have to get rid of the problem, the child will understand that the parents are saying to get rid of the child. Because this is in general the risk when we don't separate between problems and people. And this time, everybody is telling us that we are the problem. Yeah, the doctors are saying that you are infected, you are a problem, you infect everybody around. So if you look to the medical approach, and this is really, really interesting, the medical approach is that there is no person, there is just a medical problem. And in the hospital, sometimes doctors are calling you according to the diagnosis you have, more or less. And they connected the rooms where are the people with the diagnosis more. And this time, this approach was transferred to our world. So it was really a challenge for social workers. You know, I start to hear social workers saying, I am a problem now, I'm infected. I am the problem of the center or the service. And for me, it was like, no, you are not a problem. You are just a person that has an infection. And also the people in front of us. And I remember how was the beginning in last year. And I was in some conferences also related to social work in Portugal and also in Europe. You know, when they start to lock the stuff in the centers, everybody there because they are the problems. Put everybody in the center and lock it up because they are the problem. And I think when you are in such a dangerous paradigm, it's so complicated, because then they told us, stay far away, you are the problem, that's it. So there was no way, and we still have problem to see other issue in society. And, you know, at the IFSW, we are discussing with our partners that there are a lot of people, they are not seen anymore, vulnerable people. And I think this is what you discussed today. Vulnerable people, we don't see them anymore. We see COVID everywhere, and that's it, nothing else. So I think this is also something that we have to learn resilience by learning to stay in contact with each other and separate. Yeah, this, what does mean? This problem, and that you are not excluded the moment you are infected. And I think this is going to be a long time with us. And it's not only to understand for us, it's also to help people in front of us. You know, I was in a situation, I had to get along with a child with disability in a hospital. It was a very difficult situation. I was called because it was a context where I'm an external consultant. So I had to put my mask down because the child with disability was really scared of everybody, you know, being equipped and things like that. And I said, okay, let's make the child used. And, you know, the moment I did that, it was like, now you are the problem. I said, no, I'm not the problem. I'm the solution here. No, I'm not the problem. I'm the solution. And I did not get infected because the child nobody was infected there. But what I want to say is that we really have to learn to become, you know, to build our relationship again. And if you find the situation in your practice, let me know in the chat. I see that there are some comments. Thank you very much. I will let Elsa to comment a little bit if there is anything to comment, and then I move forward. I give you a little bit of space, Elsa.
Okay. You can talk, because most of the commentaries is about that the persons are delighted with your presentation.
Oh, thank you very much. So I understand a little bit when you speak, but if you write, I don't.
No, go ahead. Your presentation are brilliant.
Thank you very much. So another component of do you see my presentation, Elsa? It's on the screen now.
Yes.
Yes, thank you. I see some strange things on my screen. Another part is that we start to reflect on our emotions. And I would say we have to start to reflect also on the negative emotion. There is an image that we social workers are heroes. We are the angels. We are the great people in the world. And we don't have negative feelings. We have only positive feelings. We are in a positive mood. We have to support others. We are not in any kind of negative emotions, because we don't have to have negative emotions. Yeah, we are not allowed to have negative emotions expressed in our professional relationship, and that's true. But doesn't mean we don't need to talk about our negative emotions, about being afraid, about anxiety, about a lot of emotions that we have. We are also human beings, and we have double role. Yeah, we are affected like everybody else, but at the same time, we have to help the most vulnerable people. So I think the fact that we were confronted with this fixed rule, that the decision, we were not involved in the decision, no space for innovation, and also, you know, this uncertainty about bad and good. And I think these are components that we social workers, we can turn them in our favor. Because, for example, yes, we are not allowed, it's not ethically to express emotion, negative emotion in the professional space. But doesn't mean we cannot meet with our colleagues and talk about that we are afraid about. Doesn't mean if we receive a decision done by our government, we have to implement it as it is. It's impossible, in fact. And this was something I was really struggling, because, you know, we were not involved in the decision, and the decision were, of course, done by people who has no idea. They have absolutely no idea about practice, about reality, and therefore it was impossible to apply them. So I think there were space for innovation, because the way we make the decision to put them in practice, and the way we can build this decision in a way that affect people less, I think this is innovation. And it's very interesting, when I was reflecting with social workers complaining that I feel like I just have to follow the rules and nothing, I can't do anything. And I start to talk to them about what do they do all day? How do they work with the colleagues and the clients? And they start to tell me a lot of things they were doing in the innovation area, but they were not able anymore to see it. And I think this is something that we all have to be aware, that this is an important element of resilience, that we still can create. We are creative people. This is our human part. I mean, it's something that in social work, some of us, years, we try to be creative and we try to innovate, and suddenly we had the feeling we were told we can't do that anymore, and we have to follow the rules. But I think we still can innovate, and I think we still can adapt, and we still can work with this regulation in a way that in practice they make sense. And I think it's our innovation to make them having sense in the practice. And of course, I think we have to manage bad and good. in a totally different way. And I think this is a skill that we develop in time. Again, we were not able to train ourselves to be resilient. We were told we have to be resilient. We said we are resilient, and suddenly we find out we don't know what this means. Another component is related to self-esteem, with self-confidence. This is another part of the work, because in many situations, social workers in practice, they start to say that they don't feel that their intervention, their support make any sense anymore. They can't help anybody and they can't do anything. And I think we still can say no to the decisions which are not good for our people, for our services, and for ourselves. I think we still can say that. And when we say no, means that we have to find another way that the decision is implemented. And I've seen this in practice, and it's possible. It's very hard, and you need that all the team is in the same direction. But I think we still can influence the decision. It's very important that if we lose self-esteem, self-perception, self-confidence, if we lose this, and I think in the last months, in the last year, it was really something like continuous activities that we are losing this. It was a pressure on us to lose self-esteem, not to be part of the decision, not to be be confident anymore. Everything around us was to push us in this direction. And I think we really have to reflect on this, and we have to be aware that we have to have the ability and to find it. We have to find a way that we change things in a way that is good for us. You know, something I hear mainly in domestic violence from the victims is that I can't do anything. I can't do anything. And this is really a victimization that it's really difficult to take somebody out of this. And for me, when I hear, you know, all this coming from the political level, you don't do anything, you do only what we are saying. You can't make decisions, you just follow them. It's really dangerous for our mental health, and is dangerous for everything we are doing. So we have to find ways. We have to find ways in our life and in our professional life. We have to talk to our colleagues. How can we touch the decision in the implementation? Because in the implementation is our job. We have to do that in the implementation. And I think there is space, not only for us, but also for the people we are working with. And the last one is, it's about positive attitude to change. Our brain is built not to change anything in our life. I like the discussion I have with the doctors I have in the team, with a neurologist, and they tell me all the time, Anna, our brain is not for producing change, but for keeping us safe. We should not do anything to put us in risk, because change means energy spent, means risk take. So we are not built for change. In that case, we should look in a way that these changes, which are coming overnight, almost in many situations, the decisions are from one day to another. We have to learn how we can implement it in a way that makes sense for us. And I think this pressure, we have to change now. I think it's something that we have to give a second thought, and we really have to consider what is possible and what does mean the step to change. And if we do that, then we still can believe that we can change the future. Otherwise, no, we can't do that. And I think and this was my last slide, and I think that we really have to consider which are the elements that we use to build ourselves to be resilient. We are not resilient we were not born with this ability. Yeah? It's something that we are learning and we are developing, and we have to include. And more than that, you know, I think we should really list a number of things which are important for us and really start working on them, because otherwise we will get out of this pandemic totally tired, in burnout, not able to turn back to our life of being creative and building the services. And if we consider this prediction, I think something we can predict about the economic crisis is going to follow, the social crisis is going to follow. So we can predict this, we can see it. Therefore, I think we have to be really careful to our resilience, first of all, because if we are not strong enough, we can't support others. So we have to be prepared for the coming future, which is challenging. We are looking forward, and I think we can prepare ourselves for this. Thank you very much, Elsa.
Thank you so much for your brilliant presentation. It gives us very interesting clues to think about not only how we can be more resilient professionals, but also how we can be more resilient community. And before I give the floor to the audience, I will summarize the main points about your communication, and then we will open the debate. And thank you so much, Ana, again. Bom, após esta apresentação tão rica da professora Ana, e antes de entrarmos propriamente no debate, já vejo que tem aqui alguns comentários e alguma questão, e enquanto vocês também vão colocando, se calhar no bate-papo outras, deixo então apenas 5 apontamentos necessariamente breves sobre esta aplicação. Uma primeira ideia-chave parte da necessidade de sermos profissionais resilientes nos atuais tempos de incerteza e de vulnerabilidade em que vivemos, desde logo porque é precisamente neste cenário de desequilíbrios, de incertezas, de imprevisibilidades, no qual a capacidade do indivíduo controlar a sua existência está gravemente comprometida e que o próprio sentimento de pertença a um coletivo diminuiu, é aqui que o assistente social é chamado a intervir. E logo uma das questões relevantes aqui formulada foi o que é que estamos a falar quando nos referimos à resiliência. E a professora Ana falou-nos de que muitas pessoas têm uma noção intuitiva sobre o que é a resiliência. Eu, até, enquanto ela falava, lembrava-me da metáfora que a Associação Americana de Psicólogos, a APA, recorre para falar sobre este conceito, que é a descida de uma canoa pelo rio, levando-nos a imaginar que nessa viagem passamos por desafios, por descidas rápidas, por turbulências e desvios para locais que não conhecemos. E nessa aventura, tal como na vida, o conhecimento e a experiência servem-nos de guias para a tomada de decisão. E no caso do Serviço Social, ou nas palavras da professora Ana, o que é que incluímos neste processo de construção de resiliência? E disse a nossa convidada que a resposta, num primeiro momento, passa pela capacidade de determinar, de formular e de perseguir objetivos realistas a longo prazo. Alerta-nos, pois, para a importância de estabelecer objetivos claros, objetivos concretizáveis, pois isso também clarifica os passos concretos para a sua realização, mas também porque nos ajuda a desenvolver um sentimento de maior autoeficácia. Alerta-nos ainda para a importância de distinguir pessoas e problemas. E como também vi um dos comentários, penso que foi da Sónia Guadalupe, que as pessoas, no fundo, como disse, as pessoas não devem, esta confusão que muitas vezes existe na nossa área, não é? Entre o que é a pessoa e o que é o problema, de facto é um ponto importante a termos em consideração. Alerta-nos igualmente para a importância de, além de reconhecermos e aceitarmos as emoções que possamos estar a sentir face a uma adversidade, não há emoções más, é importante que nos questionemos sobre como lidar com essas situações e como implementar linhas de ação também eficazes. E por fim, se nada me escapa, alerta-nos também para a importância de aprendermos a ser flexíveis nesta viagem e para cultivar uma esperança realista, porque a esperança também é um importante elemento de empoderamento. No entanto, esta formulação impecável não nos dispensa de identificar quais os fatores que estão na origem da resiliência e, como termina tão bem a sua apresentação, como é que podemos ser resilientes num contexto tão imprevisível, onde todos estamos longe de poder prever o futuro, onde são tão poucas as coisas que podemos controlar. Ou então num contexto em que é o próprio estado de bem-estar, ao desconsiderar os processos sociais, as causas que estão na gênese dos problemas, mostra-se cada vez menos capaz de proteger os cidadãos. E por isso alerta-nos para algo muito importante, de que temos que ter cuidado para que o conceito de resiliência não seja uma ferramenta discursiva, usada para levar os indivíduos a aceitar o risco e distanciando-se, se quisermos, aqueles que governam daqueles que são governados. Não se pode, sem dúvida, dissociar a resiliência dos vários campos, dos vários sistemas nos quais os indivíduos vivenciam, e este enfoque da resiliência não pode cair no indivíduo como se ele fosse responsável por melhorar o seu contexto de vida e como se o Estado ficasse em segundo lugar no que toca a questões tão importantes como a pobreza, o racismo, a falta de acesso a recursos, a educação de baixa qualidade. E se quisermos retomar a metáfora da canoa, e agora aproveitando também aqui alguns contributos de conversas com a professora Ana, poderíamos dizer que na canoa poderiam navegar juntas várias pessoas e que o sucesso da sua viagem dependerá do seu trabalho em equipa, tantas vezes ontem reforçado, de construirmos comunidades colaborativas e da compreensão de que o bem-estar de cada um depende e interliga-se com o bem-estar de todos os ocupantes da canoa. É esta a perspectiva Ubuntu, que também já vi comentado, penso que pela Wanda Ramalho, nos comentários, de que nós só somos pessoas através de outras pessoas, de que eu sou porque tu és. Ora, isto significa que quando pretendemos avaliar a resiliência ou de uma família, ou de um indivíduo, ou de um dado grupo profissional como o nosso, não devemos tecer considerações que possam julgar os indivíduos ou os grupos como não resilientes, sempre que eles não conseguem lidar de forma adaptativa às adversidades. E por isso a inclusão do conceito de resiliência nas políticas públicas tem que ser muito cuidadosa e diria mesmo contextualizada. Deve ser feita através de uma abordagem multidimensional e estrutural para podermos enfrentar as adversidades. E bom, deixava agora espaço para o debate e para as questões, pedindo também aqui ajuda ao professor Duarte nesta triagem das questões que me, entretanto, possam ter escapado e também na sua tradução em direto. We have already some interesting questions from our audience. The first question is from, I think, Ana Cristina Ribeiro, and she asked, what active role can we play in our professional practice with people and for people?
Thank you very much. I think an important role we had during this pandemic, it was to take care of ourselves first. I don't know if this sounds strange to you, but in March 2020, we discussed the ethical, from the ethical point of view, which are the aspects that we have to consider. And the first was that we have to take care of ourselves to be able to take care of others. And the second, I think, the second part, and I connect only with this period that we are going through, I think our role is more and more, and I look to our colleagues all over Europe, is to make people visible, mainly vulnerable people. If you look, for example, we had a research, and Portugal was part of it in IFSW. We had a research about poverty. And we find out that people that were already living in poverty before the pandemic, they are now in such a level of poverty that they are not anymore visible in communities, and definitely they were not included in all these measures that we had over the last year. So, for example, in some countries, some people with medical problems, they were not having access to medical anymore. And I think one important role that social workers are having in this time, more than the responsibility to themselves really, is to help people to become visible. And I think we are going to have to enter in a lot of fights with politicians very soon if you didn't start yet. I heard something in your discussions, but I think we are going to start soon negotiation in some parts if possible. Otherwise, I think we really have to fight for the people which rights and access to services doesn't exist anymore. There are no services for them. The first, this is something I don't know about Portugal, but in many countries in Europe, a number of social services in community, they were closed. They could not run anymore. So I think it's important that we don't let people behind. We still help them to be visible and still ask resources for them.
Thank you. Thank you for your answer. Mais alguma questão? Quem quiser pode também colocar diretamente. Duarte, não sei se me escapou aqui, agradecia que me pudesse ajudar. Algum comentário, alguma questão? No?
Can I add something, Elsa?
Yes, yes.
I think it's also for us professionals, for social workers in social services, more than ever, we have to help the new generation of social workers. And it was not easy for the universities during this year to train social workers. It was really hard. Yes. And it was very difficult to train social workers online. Yes. And the students in social work, we are now at the second generation of social workers that they are graduating university and then the labor market. Even some of them were not having enough practice because no social services accepted, or only few social services accepted students in social work because they could not protect them and they could not take this responsibility. And I think we have to find a way, and I will stop because I saw Professor Doutora. I think we have to find a way that social services support the university more on helping in training the young generation of social workers, and also include all these components.
Yes. Yes.
I'm sorry, I had my micro off, and I was sharing a comment from Sandra Batista. She says that she thanks for the excellent sharing, and she says that some social workers felt that they had no voice in order to better defend people's rights, being blocked by the rules that were given. Can you comment, please?
Yes, it was like that. It was like, you know, in the beginning and all over the year. Do you remember when we started this pandemic that we had no material, no protection, no mask, nothing? And we were really calling everybody. I remember that I started to write. I wrote to all your president, prime minister, all the European Commission, everybody. I was calling them for equipment. We had no voice when we were coming to how the changes affect people. But I would not say that we did not have a voice at all. I think it was very difficult for each social worker to be heard. But I really think that somehow the common voice was heard. And they could hear us that we have to follow sometimes not to follow some rules because we have to help people, and they realize they cannot help people anymore. And after a while, they start to hear us. And if you have the feeling that they don't hear you in your country, in the parliament, or from the president down, I have to tell you that this is not true. They do see you and they do hear you. I did this test with a lot of parliamentarians. They know. They don't know how to handle. They don't know what to do. I had discussions, private discussion, that's why I will not mention the people, with people who are leading the Ministry of Social Affairs, and ask them, did you help your social workers during this time? And some of them said, yes. And I said, I don't think so. And they said, we didn't know what to do. And they left us alone. In many countries, they left us alone. They did hear us. They did. They know the problem we are facing. And if you speak to anybody out of your service, to anybody, they hear us. I have no doubts. In fact, I think they hear us more than ever, but they don't know what to do. They don't know how to help us. And they don't tell us this. I had some people in my country that they were honest and they said, I don't know what to do. And now you know what to do. Please tell people what to do. Okay, this was very helpful. And they let us alone. Okay, but at least we could manage our interventions. But I think it's really is like that. They do hear us. They see us.
Thank you so much. We have another questions from Monica Caldeira. Good afternoon, Professor Ana. Says that social policies are going to have new challenges, especially with the pandemic. Will the state and social security be able to think outside the bubble? Many times it does not have our experience of terrain, how to make us heard as just social workers from some organization.
Let's say private, or much
Yes.
easier for me, organization. Yes. In some country, they forgot about the public service. So whatever they did, they forgot about somebody, and they forget about people in need. You know what is the good part, I would say? There is something that your Association of Social Workers know, because I work with Graça, and I was working with Fernanda, and I work with people in Portugal. We have the possibility through our International Federation of Social Workers to connect with a number of institutions and networks. So, for example, now the International Federation of Social Workers is working close with everything exists in Europe. There is no organization that we don't work. Public, from the Parliament to the European Commission, to the United Nations, to the ILO, to ESN, to FRA, there is nobody we don't work with in Europe. And I think at the moment we are connected in a way that, for example, if we are weak in our country, we push at the European level, and the other way around. So I think, hi Fernanda, I think I work with Fernanda a lot on this, and Graça, I don't know if she's here. And I think what we do, and we didn't do it before, I'm in this field for 25 years now, 30 altogether, 25 years of social work. I think we never had this power as we have today. So if we don't, how to say, if you are not heard in our countries, then we go to the European level and we push them that they look in our countries. And of course, not always we manage, but we do manage from time to time. And I think the way the national policy will be designed in the future will not be in the interest of the people, because more and more people will need services and support. And I don't think our governments are looking to this. So I think we have to be more prepared to fight in case, and if, how to say, everybody should fight in their own place and to bring arguments and to negotiate, and everybody where is. I think if we all together, and this should be IFSW, and at least this is how I understand it, then I think we have a chance. this is what I trust, that we together can influence. And what we did, for example, in the last year, it was that we were able to use the experience in a country where something went well, then we use that experience to produce change in another country. So I think somehow being connected and so strong, connected with each other, I think somehow we will manage, but doesn't mean this is an easy way. Yeah.